Hey there, welcome to the Drawing Codex. In this video, I want to share with you a drawing tip that I've always found to be super useful. It's the concept of timed drawings, or using time to create structure for our art. It's something that I've used a lot to both help develop my artistic ability and also to help fit artistic stuff into my life when I'm really short on time, but I still want to do some personal sketching, or in the beginning when, again, I was struggling to put in the time to get better at art. I found that using the concept of timed drawings or fitting our art into a particular amount of time in a schedule is something that's really useful. And there's a lot of reasons for this in terms of how it helps us get into flow that I want to share with you in this video. Welcome again to the Drawing Codex, where we're all about drawing cool stuff from our imagination, embracing the challenge of drawing, and mastering the craft of line and color illustration. Now, as I said, timed drawing is something that I've used for a long time. In many cases because I was just trying to meet a schedule. Again, I'm a professional working artist. I've been drawing comics and concept art for video games for over 20 years. And I really found that the idea of working towards a schedule or a deadline here is something that is a little bit magical. It's very powerful. And I think there's a lot of reasons for this that really get into the artistic psyche that we can use for our own benefit. But it can be something that sort of feels antithetical to the artistic ethos, right? It's a little bit kind of, not creative to sit there and sort of set a timer. But I think there's a lot of really good reasons for why this does fit the artistic mindset. And that's what I want to discuss in this video. Just quickly, if you want to learn a little bit about my thoughts on illustration and how to build your career making pictures, you can check out my free illustration mini workshop that goes over my thoughts on how to get more detail and polish in your work, how to think about getting your professional mindset working, and it goes over my journey for how I went from being not very good at drawing in the beginning to becoming a professional artist. And I share with you my top tips there that hopefully can allow you to save yourself some time and not make a lot of the mistakes that I made. It's free. The link will be in the description. At its core, I think pressure helps. That's a big sort of part of this. And we'll talk about why I think it helps. But when I was really, trying to figure out my artistic game, I would often, delve into procrastination quite a bit. I was not always very sort of organized. Now I feel like I have a lot of that stuff sorted, but in the beginning I was really struggling. And I'd sort of go days without drawing and I really wouldn't have this stuff figured. And I think one of the things that really sort of helped me to just kick me into gear was the pressure of the deadline, right? Pressure creates diamonds, right? It's often that knowledge that kind of we must go in a particular direction. It's the constraint that can often inspire creativity and sort of inspire us to do great things. When I first started drawing my comic book, my art just got a lot better because I had to draw a lot more, and I also sort of had to come to terms with the fact that not everything I did was perfect, and some of the things I was going to do, I just had to do them because they had to be done and the deadline was there. So I think it's often that, this pressure helps us to get better as artists, but it can be hard to sort of apply it in an artificial way. So one of the main reasons I think this is so important and it works well is that timing causes us to focus. If you're under a deadline, often all of the worries, all of the little neuroses, all of that kind of left brain intellectual stuff will tend to kind of filter out. When you know you're going to be in trouble, or that there's some deadline or there's some time limit on something, you tend to naturally focus on achieving that particular thing to the detriment of others. And in most cases, that's necessary. You can't do all of the things all the time. You need to choose. You need to be brutal in the way you select what you're going to put your focus onto. And I think this is one of the things that often trips people up as artists in the beginning, it can be hard to have a good intent and a good focus going into a drawing, and you sort of start and you're thinking about all these kind of different things. When you're in the beginning, one of the things that you're trying to do is kind of get into that creative flow. Now, putting a timer on helps you do that, because you get a natural sort of quieting, as I said, of all the intellectual kind of nonsense, and you have that focus. And it's often that focus that we need to kind of get us to sort of quiet down and get into flow. Now, often timing yourself has to go along with turning off the internet, with sort of getting rid of other distractions, right? Making sure you're able to focus. So it's not just timing, but it's a matter of also timing and putting focus in. I think that the reason that that is also useful is because you know that you're not sitting down there for an unlimited amount of time. So it becomes easier to focus because you know at the end of an hour or 2 hours or however long you're going to spend on it, could be 10 minutes, you're going to be able to relax. And it's that knowledge and the trust in yourself that you're going to be able to relax at some point that is defined. And if you trust yourself and you keep yourself to that promise, you train your body to say, okay, now we can really focus. It's also important to understand that creativity works well with restriction. So this is one of those counterintuitive creative lifestyle things that you just have to understand. We often begin with these illusions of sort of sitting in a Parisian apartment loft and sort of creating these sort of things as the mood strikes, right? We want to be a capital A artist and be driven by emotion, like the famous artists, from days gone by where there was a lot of sort of recreational drug use and, questionable habits, let's say, but certainly creativity was there. I think in many cases, the reality is that creativity responds very well to pressure. It responds well to restriction, and it's often these restrictions and technical limitations that have created some of the most interesting and beautiful things that humans have ever created. Unlimited options and unlimited time typically produces rubbish. Even if it doesn't create rubbish, you still have to motivate yourself to actually do something in that unlimited amount of time, which I think is also a huge, huge challenge. Time restriction is your friend. It also allows us to think in terms of good enough. Naturally. This is one of those concepts, finished, not perfect. There's a lot of versions of this basic advice, which is that finishing things is really important, and it's almost more important to just sort of get it done and pump out the work as opposed to focusing on it being perfect. Now, again, I think we could say a lot of things about that, but there's a lot of truth there, and especially if you're struggling with perfection, and the perfection is kind of holding you back from doing anything, then I think it is really important to try and tackle this. And timing yourself naturally figures this out. It naturally solves this problem, because when you time yourself, you naturally are just going to think more like, well, I got this done in that amount of time. And there's an achievement. You can sort of mark yourself as achieving it if you drew for that amount of time. Whatever happened in that amount of time is kind of a unit of art. And even if it kind of sucks, you can kind of say, well, but at least I sat down there and I did what I said I was going to do. And even if maybe your art didn't turn out as good as it could, you can still say, but I did the best I could in that amount of time. And it's true. And what you can work on next, again, is increasing the level of quality in that amount of time or whatever. But it moves us naturally towards thinking about how can we get the most amount of done in a particular amount of time? And that forces us to think about process and efficiency and really focusing. And again, all of those things pull us out of the idea of kind of, maybe like sitting back a little bit more and kind of trying to be like, oh, how do I make this perfect? Or this is wrong, or this is wrong. Or, we're less negative and we're more like, how can I do something in this amount of time? So in my experience sort of mentoring others, it's a natural way to get us to look forward to that sort of point in time where we're going to finish, and to look for ways to improve within that amount of time, and to get us into that framework of figuring out, again, how can we be better as opposed to how can we be perfect. The last thing that I think timing will really help you with is fitting art into your life. This is something that I often recommend as part of building a ritual, which is a big part of what I advocate on this channel. I think that you can get past a lot of the typical creative blocks and that capital A artist mentality of, self kind of doubt and, like allowing yourself to be, drawn into the emotions of the time and needing everything to align perfectly for you to create. I think that if you practice building time slots into your life for creating art, even if they're quite small, again, what you'll tend to do is you'll find to optimize the type of art and the type of creative process that you use to create something that's going to be satisfying to you in that amount of time. This is not an instant fix. It takes you a while to calibrate yourself to figure out and know what can you create within a certain amount of time. If I'm going down and I'm doing sketching for 15 minutes, I kind of know what I'm able to do in that amount of time. If I've got an hour, I'm obviously able to create more things or more interesting things or more complex drawings. If I've got 2 hours, it's more complex still. 3 hours, it's more complex still. And, I sort of practiced doing drawings in those sort of different amount of times. And over, the multiple decades that I've been a working professional, I've gotten a pretty good idea of what I can do. But when I was starting out, and maybe if you're starting out as well, this will take a while. So don't freak out if the first few times you do time drawings, it turns out not so good, right? It takes a while for your brain and your body to kind of recognize how long have I got? What do I need to get done at what particular amount of time? But again, that skill of focusing on the efficiency of it is something that you will be able to apply to all sorts of drawing, and it'll be very, very useful. The main thing that this helps me with, even today, as someone who draws all the time, is frequently I will want to work on personal projects, or I want to fit things in, or if I'm really trying to be efficient and sort of, do time hacking and that kind of thing, I might have to work on multiple projects during a day. And the idea of kind of saying, okay, I'm going to work on this one for a few hours and this one for a few hours, and sort of being able to fit stuff into my life and say, okay, and then I'm going to do an hour of sketching for myself, right? So I've got like 5 hours of work, and it really allows me to sort of focus and get stuff done in that amount of time. But just the idea of timing or knowing how long or what I can do in a particular amount of time, knowing how long something's likely to take and getting very good at sort of fitting things that I enjoy doing into different amounts of time has helped me to increase the amount of art that I'm able to create on a personal level. So, I'd frequently be sitting there, sort of late at night, and I knew that I could kind of create a certain level of quality and complexity within 3 hours. And I would just kind of keep working at that. And that ability to kind of know, okay, here I'm at, 0 hours. And I know if I spend 3 hours on this or 2 hours on something, I know I'm going to have something at the end of it because I've practiced that. I've built that skill for creating something in a timed sort of slot. Then it kind of allows me to, again, really focus on that and know like, hey, it's going to be worth me doing that versus like watching TV or doing something else that's kind of, to me, like less interesting. Overall, I don't get to create something. It allows me to know for sure that I'm going to have an output, a finish. And I think it's that is the thing that will allow art to become more addictive, because it's less a matter of I'm just going to sit here and work on my art, and it's more a matter of I'm going to create something in that time. Now, I found, I don't sit there and try and time it to the minute or anything like that. If I say 3 hours and it ends up spending 4, I'm like, I don't really care, right? It's not the end of the world. But the key is getting used to putting myself under pressure. Sometimes I'm off, sometimes I'm on. But if I have this mindset, I'm under pressure, and I really find that focus to be interesting, to the point where, again, for me, it's often far more interesting for me to, if I have 2 or 3 hours lying around at the end of the day or something for some reason, which is very rare these days, but I'll often be just wanting to create something because I know I'll be able to create something interesting in that amount of time, as opposed to going and watching Netflix or watching a movie or something. The idea of me creating something becomes an event that is going to, happen at some point. It's a unit of creative energy. And I think that concept, even though it's a little bit amorphous, I found that very, very useful. And I think that's different, and I respond differently to it because I like that idea of creating something sort of finished in a short amount of time. But I found that just getting that concept right in my head and practicing it has allowed me to create a lot more art than I otherwise would. Anyway, that's all I've got for this one. It's a pretty simple concept. Just get a timer of some kind. Again, this is the kind of timer that I have that I normally sort of use, and you just kind of set it for whatever you want and hit the thing, and then at the end it's kind of done. And, alarm will go off, an egg timer, you can get one on your phone. So pretty simple idea. And, you can either view this as trying to, give yourself a larger amount of time, or, try to create like a big sort of work and, figure out how long it takes you. Or you could just kind of say, hey, I know I often have like a half an hour here or a half an hour there, and I'd like to, like build a sketchbook, or, just work on a particular thing, or again, do some little studies or technical studies to help get, better at my sort of foundational skills. Again, just set the timer and do it. If you spend that time doing that thing, you can consider that a success. It's a win. It's a thumbs up. It's a tick, right? You have done what you said you're going to do, and that will build confidence within yourself. That's really, really important. So there's multiple ways you can do it. You can try and fit little amounts of time into your sort of life here and there, or you can use it as a way to kind of, again, build your good enough kind of mentality and work on your ability to create pieces in a shorter amount of time. Even if that's, sort of 4 hours or something longer, timing it will be quite useful. Let me know in the comments if this idea is interesting, if you tried it, maybe you've tried it and failed at it. Let me know. If you've got any additional questions, I'd be more than happy to help out. But other than that, yeah, just interested to hear whether you've tried this concept and whether it's sort of worked for you, or whether it's something you want to give a go. Let me know in the comments. Other than that, I'll catch you around. Happy drawing.